Hi there, and you're very welcome to our Student Spotlight. Today we're speaking to Hira Khan, who is in second year studying the LLB degree. That's the pure law degree here in Maynooth University. Good morning and welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Very well. Tell me, you're, I believe, right now in Waterford.
Yes, I am.
What's the weather like?
The weather is actually really nice here. I guess it really makes up for the saying, the sunny south, the southeast.
Yeah, indeed. I'd say you get the majority of the good weather
Yes.
when it does come periodically. So you've been based there since we've been in lockdown, but you're in second year. But can we just roll back to your leaving cert and your whole plan for college? What were you thinking?
So for me, it really wasn't where I would go. All I knew is that I would want to do law. And in terms of preferences for universities, my guidance counselor encouraged me to go to open days, which is, I think, where I kind of fell in love with Maynooth for the first time. Um, so I came down to the summer open day, and before then I had heard nothing of Maynooth. We had gotten like the prospectus at home, but other than that, like none of my friends were going, and so it really was kind of like okay, I'll go and explore my options, but who knows what will happen.
So were you taking that approach to all colleges then here? Right? Like your guidance counselor said, go to open days. So you were essentially going around the country.
Yeah, because as I said, I had no preference in terms of university or where I'd go. It was more so, oh, I want to do law.
So what would then, if geography wasn't so much of a concern, and given that you're in Waterford, Cork would have been probably the closest to you, maybe arguably, maybe not. What were you thinking then about what was going to define the law course for you in terms of what you would choose?
So it really was about the course, how the course was designed itself. I was aware of the fact that from the beginning of I would say sixth year, that if I was going to do law, I had to do it in a way that was suitable for me. And I'm more of a hands-on, practical kind of person. And so when I came to Maynooth and spoke to lecturers and students, and I kind of had this concern that, oh, well, I don't have a law background. So like, what can I do to make myself stand out? And they told me about the different practical based subjects that they had. So in terms of like negotiation, legal skills and advocacy. I lecture actually, she was like, don't worry about this. She was like, we don't expect you to have a background in law. We will train you. And I think that was kind of like the defining point, because it wasn't just like walking into university, sitting down in a lecture hall and just learning. It was having the chance to apply that theoretical knowledge in a practical way where it would just stand to me for life, and I would be building up my confidence as I went along.
So I've spoken to other law students previously, and they've said, reading, like most degrees, reading is a large part of what they do. But that's interesting that you're wanting to apply what you had learned or what you were learning as quickly as possible in a meaningful way. Yeah. And was that possible in first year in the LLB degree?
It actually, yes, it was. So we had negotiation in first semester, and everything was going smooth for first semester at least. And so we had a chance to work in teams and kind of for the first time be in this environment where it wasn't just about what you knew, but it was about how you communicated what you knew. And then in second semester, I think it was around March, where we switched to remote learning. And we got a chance to, I think this was really important as well, in terms of like what I'm doing now as well, that when we switched to remote learning, it didn't stop the practical assessments. And so we had kind of one-on-one sessions, team-based sessions online, and we still got a chance to apply our knowledge in terms of like an oral submission. So it would be almost as if we were barristers in court. And it was good in the sense that a few months later, courts went remote. And it really was just setting us up for the future of kind of this online era.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So You're almost ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
Um,
almost.
so there's a few interesting things there in terms of the content in first year that you know you didn't have a law background, nor would you be expected to, given you were coming from secondary school. But so there are foundational modules everybody must do. I presume most of the content in first year is prescriptive, and you're not getting to choose much in the way of anything that you might like to focus on specifically. Is that
Yeah.
correct? That it is.
Yeah, for LLB, that's actually, we do not get to choose. All of our modules are mandatory. And then when we move into second year, you get to pick electives. That's when it kind of, you know, builds up from second to final year. And so in terms of first year for us, I never really felt that, oh, like we're doing something that I didn't want to be doing, because all of our modules kind of intertwined. So in terms of, let's say, tort law, for tort law, we had an assessment on, like, it was a mock trial based assessment. So again, like what I said about barristers being in court almost, we were getting that experience from like almost day one of semester one. And we were able to apply, let's say, our medical negligence in an open court kind of scenario. And so you were really kind of applying your knowledge in a way that it would stand to you for life almost, because you're constantly applying what you know, and it's almost muscle memory then by the time that you get to final year when you're doing all of these moot court competitions. And it was the same for contract law. Contract law and my negotiation module used to tie in together, because we were doing we were negotiating contracts. And so it was amazing to see how at the beginning, everyone was kind of just like, oh my God, like we didn't get to choose what we had to do. And then towards the end, it was kind of like, this makes sense now.
Yeah. So like you're coming into a first year degree in an area that you haven't studied in any kind of an official way before. So where did the interest in law come from then? If you, as you say, you don't have a background in it in terms of your family, where did you get even an exposure to it as an idea for a career?
So I was actually a keen debater throughout secondary school. And I think I had that one defining moment. Most of my actually leaving Cert subjects were science-based. And it was just kind of expected that, oh, like she'll go into science. And to me, I didn't really think further than that. And the first time that I sort of kind of started thinking about it was in fifth year, when I had taken part in a debate. And it was kind of like a debate between classmates, more so than an official debate. It was a behind the scenes kind of thing, and all of my friends were around me. And I remember I sat down, and my friend turned to me and she goes, her brother was he was in LLB in Maynooth, actually, coincidentally. And she turned to me and she goes, why are you so just like bent on doing science because you do science subjects? She was like, you express your opinion in a way that's understandable to others, but not demeaning or downgrading because the other person doesn't have that knowledge. And she said, why don't you think about law? And that's when the idea kind of popped into my head. And the more I thought about it, the more I researched it, the more, you know, I read about it in prospectuses, and the more I watched Suits. Not the most ideal ways to learn, I suppose, but it was inspiring. Sure. All the same. And the more I thought about it, I thought, oh my God, this makes sense. And I had kind of a clear purpose from then on. Before that, I was kind of just like, oh, I guess I'll do something in science. And from then on, I think I was just like, oh, LLB, like nothing else.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah. How one moment can
Yeah.
change the course of a person's life potentially. But of course, just because you study a law degree doesn't necessarily mean that you're tied to that for life, and you may well go into something in the medical area at a future date. It's, everything's up for play. So you were going to these open days, and Maynooth stood out for you, that you had that kind of sense that you could apply what you were learning pretty quickly in your degree, and that's what decided it for you then, really. That's the sense that I'm getting. You put that course down as your first choice, the 501 degree, or did you think about the arts route into law?
I actually went and put down, so LLB was my first choice, and I was lucky enough to get that choice, but I did end up putting the BCL and the arts route into law as well for second and third option, just because I knew if that I didn't get into LLB, I would be able to go into these law degrees. And although they weren't entirely law, I was doing law modules plus other modules, and I would have flexibility transferring into LLB. But the plan was always just to do pure law.
Okay, which is a 4-year degree as opposed to 3, and that's because you really wanted to study nothing but law as your degree.
Yeah.
Do you think that having that as your degree will give you more options, or do you think what do you think will define in terms of your next steps after your degree? I mean, you're only in second year, so we're kind of jumping the gun somewhat, but do you think that is that just purely because you really want to study a lot of law, or do you think it will actually assist you more?
So this is an interesting question, because I think my reasoning at the time was that, oh, I just want to do law, like I don't want any distractions. But the more I think about it, I think it would have been nice to have something else to just like, it would have been nice to, let's say, have a language and kind of have that something outside of law. And I'm still content with my decision to do law because it's constantly reinforced by the fact that my focus was on practical based subjects. I wanted to be able to speak just as well as I wanted to be able to learn. And I think in LLB, that might stand more to my advantage, because from day one, like I said, in semester 1, we were practicing what we had learned. And I think a lot of the students that had transferred into LLB, they will have that chance in terms of dispute resolution and moot court. But we kind of in first year had those shaky first times, those nervous first times, we got them all over and done with. So we were more confident coming into second year, which I think that might be more to my advantage.
Okay, good answer. Tell me, when you arrived in the September then in first year, did you have friends did you know anyone in Maynooth, and how did you kind of make that transition?
So no, actually, no one in my university was coming to Maynooth. And for me, it was, my friends weren't my focus, because I knew that I would make friends. And this was something that I knew the first time that I stepped onto Maynooth, in terms of like the open day, is that there was so much diversity and everyone was so willing to just like stop and talk to you. And so I already had that sense of like comfortableness coming into Maynooth, but I didn't know anyone. And so the way for me to get around this was to join clubs and societies. And I joined, I think, all of the law societies, and I joined like a few other societies in terms of like hobbies. So like Islamic Society, I joined Tea Society. And from the first time of walking in, it wasn't just meeting people who were in my course the same age as me. I was meeting people from like the older years. I was meeting other LLBs who kind of ended up taking me under their wing, so to speak. And I have gone on to meet people from my course. And I think that was inevitable, because a lot of us don't come in knowing people, and you sit beside someone in a lecture and you'll turn to them and be like, hi, how are you? Let's get a coffee after this. And I knew that that was something that would have been easy to do, which is why going into clubs and societies, my mindset was that I need to meet people outside of my course. I need to know more people. I need to know people who are doing other courses. And that was through clubs and societies.
Excellent. Okay. So you settled in pretty quickly then. Did you live on campus in first year, or what was your accommodation setup?
So I was actually off campus, and I was about, I think, a 10-minute walk away from campus. And that was just due to the fact that I didn't get on-campus accommodation. But I think that it actually ended up suiting me better. And I lived with 2 other students who were in Maynooth, and they were actually from 3rd and final year. And so it was a good kind of dynamic, I suppose, because we were all still students, but we had like something else to just talk about outside of our degrees. We had kind of just this, it was like having this common ground to kind of, okay, like I can separate my social life and my degree now, because these guys, they won't understand what I mean when I'm talking about, oh my God, there's so much reading, because they have their own like interests, they have their own assignments.
Sure.
And so that was really nice. And
Yeah, no, just wondering about that commitment to coursework. How much time did you have to kind of get yourself involved in clubs and societies? Is it a big jump from second level, do you think?
Oh, it was a huge jump, because I was doing a lot of subjects in my leaving cert, and then I went into LLB, and at first I think everyone was like, wow, our timetables are so empty, like let's fill them up. And I think first year is like a good time for that to happen as well. Our timetables consisted of, I think for both of my semesters, I had around 12 hours of lectures per week. Which if you break it down, that's almost either, I think 2 lectures per day at the most. I had days where I had only 1 lecture, and I had days where I had no lectures. And so it was easy to commit to clubs and societies, because their events kind of catered to people who have busy timetables. And so our events would it would range to anywhere between like maybe lunchtime during the day on a Friday, or it would be from kind of 6 to 8 p.m. on a weekday. And so it was easy to commit to that, because I would they would tell us in advance kind of on their social medias. And so I would just pencil it in for the next week, and I would plan my days according to that. So let's say I had a 6 p.m. event. I knew that from 9 to 4 p.m. I was just going to be at my desk and I was going to be working. And so then
You sound like you're the model student here. Do you think can you apply your learning in your class to what you're doing in the societies in terms of the law societies? Do you see a connection there?
Yes, actually, and specifically in terms of Flax Society, we get to do.
That's the free legal aid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they do train us in specific training sessions, but these training sessions are also based on modules that we would do. It's like a crash course into a module, but we would have like a background knowledge into these modules. So in terms of like landlord and property law. And we would get to do these training sessions, and then we do these mock clinics. So you apply your legal knowledge, what you've done in, let's say, the last year of your life, and these training sessions in mock scenarios, so fictitious scenarios, and we would be supervised by a barrister to ensure that we are actually giving correct legal advice, and we're not, telling them any irrelevant things, which I think, it's amazing if you do go on to become a barrister or a solicitor. And so we got to apply our knowledge in that way. And then we are technically supposed to give legal advice once you are certified. So you have the certificate after you do the core training sessions and you do the mock clinic session. But with the pandemic, I think we had to put a stop to that. And so for the time being, we've had time to practice and do those mock clinics. We just haven't had a chance to do it in terms of like giving advice to actual law students or like students outside of law who need help.
Sure. And when you're thinking about the rest of the degree, year 3 and year 4, there's a work placement opportunity, isn't there, to apply for? How does that work? Do you know?
So this is actually funny, because I'm like right bang smack in the middle of doing that. So we get an opportunity to apply for a placement to a commercial or a corporate law firm. And this opportunity comes around in January. It's announced to us in December, and we get to do like Q&A sessions before filling out our applications, which is nice because you can kind of go into your application with a mindset that like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. And so when you begin the application process, it's around December time, and then it's handed up in January. And then a month later, so end of February, you hear back from the law department itself, who, if you are successful, they'll ask you to come in for an interview with them. And this was an amazing opportunity for me, at least, because I was able to get a sense of, okay, this is what they'll ask me. And I was able to get that nervousness out of the way, because it'll always be there when you're going on to do something that's new. And then around this time, actually March, you are hearing from law firms. So once you are successful in the university interview, which you'll hear back almost, I think 3 days later, if you were successful or not, if you were successful, they'll pass your application on. So you don't actually technically have to be doing anything. They'll say, okay, you have around 3 days to kind of proofread your application, just make sure that you are happy with it, and then give it back to us and we'll send it out for you. And then the law firms will get in touch with you directly.
Okay.
And in terms of like, if you're an LLB student, this is something that is important and something that I didn't know until I was actually applying, is that it's really competitive and you're having like a large number of law students apply for the same positions. But in terms of like, if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world, because you still have your third year. And for me, this means doing like my third year modules and then going on to my final year. And our final grades are kind of assessed in terms of a percentage. So second year is 10%, third year is 20%, and final year is 70%. If you go on to do a placement, that 20% gets shifted onto your final year. So you come back and your final year modules are worth 90%. Whereas if you decide to stay on, they stay that 20%, and then you go on to do final year and it's 70%. So it's really a win-win situation, because you come back with this this legal experience, and then you go on to do your final year. Or you can stay and you can, you know, shift the pressure a little bit and say, okay, well, it's only 70%. So like, you know, I have time to work my way up to that 70%.
Yeah.
Which is really nice.
What a wonderful, comprehensive answer, and really interesting here. We must conclude shortly, but thinking back to yourself then in fifth, sixth year, you know, what advice would you give to yourself about the whole college experience and applying for the CAO?
In terms of applying, it's important to make sure that you're making an informed decision based on you. So not on what other people are doing or where they're going, because if I had done that, I wouldn't have been as happy as I am in Maynooth. I think I definitely had this potential and I didn't have the time to explore it unless I was at Maynooth, which is the way that I think about it now. And I think if I would have done anything differently, it would have been to start exploring this earlier. Whereas I think a lot of people are just like, oh, all of my friends are going to, you know, this certain university and I have to go there. And if it was one thing that I would just say is make an informed decision based on you and what you want, because it's inevitable that you will make friends. And going on to that, if you're nervous about making friends, just be content in the fact that other people are just as nervous as you are, and they're just as willing to go out for a coffee as you are. So turn to the person beside you, and like, you will be confident in the fact that you can turn to the person beside you and say, hi, you know, like, my name is this, can, you know, let's go out for coffee after this. And get to know each other. And also clubs and societies are an amazing way to put yourself forward. And if you're nervous about joining all of these clubs and societies at once, don't, just commit to one. And that will be more than enough.
Yeah.
That's really what I would just say to prospective students.
Absolutely. There are 4,000 students probably who will start in September and they don't all know each other.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, you know, everybody's more or less in the same boat. In conclusion, just what area of law do you think you might like to work in eventually? Do you think is that?
I think for me, it would actually be like a solicitor in a corporate firm. And that's solely based on, this is a decision that I've kind of made over the last, I think, 8 months since I finished up my contract law modules and my commercial law modules. They were just modules that I enjoyed more. And so based on that, I think I would, you know, see myself being a solicitor in a corporate firm.
But we won't hold you to that. So
Yeah.
there are 2 more years, something else may emerge. Excellent. It's a real pleasure to talk to you today. And thank you very much.
No problem at all. It was nice to talk to you as well.